There is a kind of silence that walks into a room before a person does. You have felt it. Do not pretend you have not. A door opens, and before a single word is spoken, before a hand is extended, before a name is offered, something in the air has already shifted. The temperature of the room changes. Conversations soften or sharpen. Children look up. Dogs go still. And you, without knowing why, without being able to explain it to yourself later that night, you feel that person before you ever hear them speak. This is not superstition. This is not mysticism dressed up to sound clever. This is the oldest truth the human animal has ever known about itself, buried now under centuries of noise, but never destroyed, because it cannot be destroyed. It is written into the nervous system. It is older than language. Long before your ancestors had words for danger or safety, for friend or foe, for love or threat, they had this wordless reading of another creature's presence, this instant, animal, unerring sense of who stands before them. And that sense has never left you. It has only been buried beneath the endless talking of a world that no longer trusts what it cannot say out loud. Tonight I am not going to teach you how to speak more persuasively. I am not going to give you a technique, a script, a formula for charisma that you can perform at your next meeting and discard by morning. No. Tonight I want to talk to you about something far older and far more serious than performance. I want to talk to you about presence, the presence that is felt in the body of another before a single syllable has left your mouth. I want to talk to you about the rare, and I do mean rare, aura of a human being who has done the terrible and beautiful work of becoming whole. And I want to tell you plainly that this aura cannot be faked, cannot be purchased, cannot be borrowed from a book or a seminar or a mirror rehearsal. It can only be earned through a descent that most people spend their entire lives running from. That is the subject tonight. Sit with me a while. This will not be comfortable, but I do not think you came here for comfort. Let me begin with a confession, because everything true begins with a confession. For most of your life, you have probably believed that the way to be liked, to be trusted, to be felt as safe and magnetic and good is to manage yourself, to smooth your rough edges, to say the right thing, wear the right expression, offer warmth on command. Like a light switch, you flick on for others and off again when you are alone and exhausted and no one is watching. You have built, brick by careful brick, a face to meet the faces that you meet, a pleasant face, a competent face, a kind face perhaps, if you are a generous soul, and I suspect many of you are, because cruelty rarely brings a person to an evening like this one. But here is the confession I want you to sit with. That face, however well built, however sincerely intended, is not you. It is a mask. And I do not use that word to shame you. Every human being wears one, every single one, and civilization itself would collapse without this capacity to present a coherent self to the world, rather than the chaos boiling beneath it. The mask has its place. It is not the enemy. The enemy, if we must use such a word, is forgetting that it is a mask. The enemy is coming to believe that the face you show the boardroom, the face you show your mother, the face you show the stranger on the train is the whole of who you are. Because the moment you believe that, you have severed yourself from the very source of the thing you are chasing tonight. You have severed yourself from your own depth. And people, I promise you this, because it is perhaps the single most reliable finding of a lifetime spent listening to the human soul, people can feel the difference between a mask and a man. They cannot always name it. They will call it a vibe, a gut feeling, an energy, because the modern tongue has grown embarrassed of older, truer words. But their bodies know. Their bodies have always known. Something in the nervous system of the listener registers, faster than thought, faster than judgment, whether the person before them is integrated, whole, congruent, undivided, or whether they are a beautifully performed surface with a frightened, fragmented interior hiding just beneath it. This is why some people can say almost nothing and fill a room, while others can talk for an hour and leave it emptier than when they entered. It was never about the words. It has never once, in the whole of human history, been about the words. Now, I want to take you somewhere most people are too frightened to go, because I think you are ready, or you would not still be listening. Every one of you carries within you a second self. Not a metaphor. I mean this with total seriousness. A second self built entirely of everything you decided, usually very young, was unacceptable. The anger you were told was too much. The need you were told was shameful. The sadness that made the adults around you uncomfortable, so you learned quickly, cleverly, to swallow it whole and smile instead. The jealousy, the rage, the desire, the parts of you that were too loud, too dark, too strange, too inconvenient for the people who were supposed to love all of you, but being human themselves, could only manage to love the parts that were easy. Every one of those exiled feelings did not disappear. Nothing in the psyche disappears. It goes underground. It waits, and it forms, down there in the cellar of you, an entire second personality, a shadow self, if you will allow me the old word, that you have spent your whole life trying not to become. Here is the tragedy, and I want you to hear it clearly. The harder you fight that shadow, the more power you unknowingly give it. Because what you resist, you do not defeat, you repress. And what is repressed does not vanish, it leaks. It leaks into your tone when you are tired. It leaks into the tightness of your jaw when someone brings up a subject you have never let yourself feel. It leaks into your relationships where you find yourself inexplicably furious at people who have done nothing more than remind you, in some small unconscious way, of the very thing in yourself you have refused to look at. And people feel that leak. Oh, they feel it. Long before they could ever explain it to you, they feel the static of a person at war with himself. This is why some of the most polished, most articulate, most outwardly successful people you will ever meet leave you feeling, Afterward, strangely drained, strangely uneasy, as though you have just shaken hands with someone standing in a doorway while the rest of the house behind them is dark and locked. That unease is not your imagination. That unease is your nervous system doing exactly what it evolved across 100,000 years to do, reading the difference between wholeness and fracture. This is the first great secret of the aura you are chasing tonight. It is not built from the parts of yourself you are proud of. It is built from the parts of yourself you have finally stopped hiding. I want to be very precise here because this is where people go wrong, and I do not want you to go wrong. To integrate the shadow does not mean to act it out. It does not mean giving your rage free rein in the world, or excusing cruelty as authenticity, or mistaking self indulgence for self acceptance. I have watched too many people misunderstand this and cause real harm in the name of a truth they only half understood. No, integration means something far more demanding than acting out. It means knowing. It means turning, finally, toward the parts of yourself you have spent a lifetime turning away from, and looking at them, not to obey them, and not to punish them, but simply to know them, to say at last, after years of exile, I see you, you are mine. You do not run my life, but you no longer have to hide in my basement either. This is agonizing work. I will not lie to you about that. Not tonight, not ever. To sit with your own envy without flinching, to feel the full, unedited shape of your own anger without either drowning in it or slamming the door on it. To let yourself grieve the things you have spent years pretending did not hurt you. This is not a weekend workshop. This is the labor of years, sometimes, honestly, the labor of a lifetime, and I would be lying to you if I promised it ever fully ends. But something extraordinary happens on the far side of even a little of this work, and I want you to understand exactly what it is, because it is the very thing you came here to learn about. When you stop being at war with yourself, you stop broadcasting war. That is the whole secret in one sentence, and everything else I say tonight is only commentary upon it. A person who has made peace, even an imperfect, unfinished, still under construction peace, with their own darkness does not walk into a room armed. They do not need to defend a fragile, curated image because they are no longer only that image. They have depth to stand on. And depth, real depth, not the performed depth of someone quoting philosophy at a dinner party. Depth has a gravity to it. People feel it the way you feel the pull of deep water, even when you cannot see the bottom. You do not need to be told the ocean is deep. You feel it in your body the moment you wade in past your knees. This is the aura, not charisma, not charm, depth sensed. But I have only told you half of it, and the half I have not yet told you is, I think, even more important because it explains the second word in tonight's title. Empath. There is a particular kind of person in every generation, in every family, in every workplace who feels everything. You may be one of them sitting here tonight. You walk into a room and you know before anyone tells you that something is wrong between two people who are smiling politely at each other. You sense grief in a stranger's voice on the telephone. You absorb the mood of every room you enter like a sponge absorbs water until you cannot tell by the end of the day which feelings began in your own chest and which ones simply walked in through the open door of your empathy and never left. If this is you, I want to say something to you directly, because I do not think anyone has said it to you plainly enough, and it may be the single most important sentence of this entire evening. Your sensitivity is not the problem. Your lack of a boundary around it is the problem. There are two kinds of empaths in this world, and I want you to understand the difference with total clarity, because confusing them will cost you your health, your relationships, and eventually your very sense of self. The first kind of empath is what I would call the merged empath, the one who feels another person's pain and, without realizing it, disappears into it. Their sadness becomes your sadness. Their anger becomes your anger. You leave every interaction slightly less yourself than you were before it, because you have given pieces of your own boundary away to every storm you have ever stood near. This is not a gift. I want to be honest with you tonight, because I respect you too much to flatter you. This is a wound wearing the costume of a gift. It usually begins in childhood, in a home where a small, perceptive child learned that the safest way to survive was to monitor the emotional weather of the adults around them constantly, to become exquisitely attuned to every shift in mood, because their own safety depended on it. That child grew into an adult who cannot walk into a room without immediately, compulsively, reading everyone in it. And that adult, I am sorry to tell you, is not radiating a rare and magnetic aura. That adult is radiating exhaustion, however beautifully they may have learned to hide it. But there is a second kind of empath, and this is the one we are here to speak of tonight. This is the integrated empath, the one who feels everything the merged empath feels, every bit as intensely, but who has learned, through hard and deliberate inner work, to feel it without dissolving into it. This is a person who can sit across from someone in the depths of grief, absorb the full weight of that grief with total presence and total sincerity, and still remain standing on their own 2 feet. Not detached, never detached. Detachment is its own kind of cowardice, but differentiated, whole. Present to another's pain without losing the boundary of their own person. This, I promise you, is one of the rarest capacities a human being can develop. And it is precisely the source of the aura you have come here tonight to understand. Think for a moment about why this is so rare and so precious when you find it. Most people, when they are near suffering, do one of two things. They either flinch away from it, change the subject, offer a hollow platitude, glance at their phone, because the suffering of another person threatens to stir their own unexamined pain, and they cannot bear the disturbance, or they collapse into it, drowning alongside the person they meant to help, until the suffering one now has to comfort them which happens far more often than any of us like to admit. But every so often, rarely, so rarely that you remember it for years afterward, you meet someone who does neither. They sit with you in the very center of your pain. They do not flinch. They do not rush you toward resolution. They do not need you to feel better quickly so that they themselves can feel comfortable again. And yet they do not drown either. They remain somehow steady, present, a still point in your storm. You feel in their presence both completely met and completely safe, which is a combination so rare that when you encounter it, you never forget the person who gave it to you. That is the integrated empath. That is the aura. It has nothing to do with what they say. Half the time, the people I am describing to you say remarkably little. It is not their words that heal you in that moment. It is the sheer, undivided quality of their attention. Attention that is not leaking anxiety, not performing concern, not secretly waiting for its turn to speak, not silently panicking about how to fix you so that it can escape the discomfort of simply witnessing you. It is attention that has room in it, spacious attention. And spacious attention, I want you to understand, is not a technique you can adopt on Tuesday. It is the result of the inner work I described earlier, the shadow work, the integration, the long, slow labor of becoming someone who is no longer at war with their own depths, and therefore has room left over to hold someone else's. You cannot give another person spaciousness you have not first found in yourself. This is not poetry. This is, as far as I have ever been able to observe across an entire life spent studying the human psyche, simply how it works. I want to talk now about the body because we have spoken so far mostly of the invisible, and I do not want you to leave tonight thinking this is only a matter of the mind. The body knows before the mind agrees to know. You have surely experienced this, a decision your intellect had not yet consciously reached, but that your stomach, your shoulders, the back of your neck had already made for you, hours or days before your rational mind caught up and gave it words. This is not a flaw in human design. This is the oldest and, in many ways, the most trustworthy part of you, older than language, older than reason, a kind of intelligence your ancestors relied upon for their very survival, long before the invention of clever arguments. And this same bodily intelligence is at work every single time you enter a room. The people around you are not consciously analyzing your posture, your breath, the tension in your jaw, the rhythm of your speech, but their bodies are reading all of it continuously, silently, the way a forest animal reads the air for the scent of a predator or the promise of safety. A person who is fractured, anxious, performing, even brilliantly performing, sends out 1,000 tiny signals of incongruence that the conscious mind of the listener may never register, but whose body will register instantly. A slight delay between the words and the smile, a held breath, a pulse that races almost imperceptibly beneath a calm exterior. These are not secrets you can hide through sheer force of will. because they do not originate in your will. They originate in the nervous system's honest report of your inner state. And the nervous system, unlike the mouth, does not know how to lie convincingly. This is why you cannot fake the aura we are speaking of tonight. You can fake charm. You can fake confidence for a while, in short bursts, under the right lighting. But you cannot fake coherence, the quiet, bodily truth of a person whose inside and outside are no longer at war. And the only way I have ever found in a long life of watching human beings struggle toward their own wholeness, to achieve that coherence, is to do the very inner work we have been discussing. There is no shortcut. There is no posture you can hold, no vocal exercise you can practice, no eye contact technique that will produce it artificially. The body cannot be tricked into broadcasting a peace the self has not actually found. I know this is not what you wanted to hear. You wanted perhaps 3 tips you could try tomorrow morning. I am not going to insult you with 3 tips. I am going to tell you the truth because I think somewhere in you that is what you actually came for. Let us speak now of solitude, because no one becomes integrated in a crowd. Our age is terrified of being alone. We fill every silence with a screen, every commute with a voice in our ears, every unstructured evening with some obligation, some scroll, some noise, because silence, real silence, has a way of surfacing exactly the material we have spent our lives avoiding. And I understand the fear. I do not judge it. But I must tell you, as plainly as I know how, that the aura you are chasing cannot be built inside a life that never stops talking to itself. It is only in solitude, real solitude, the kind that makes you a little uncomfortable at first, the kind where you sit with nothing but your own mind and let it say what it has been trying to say for years, that the deeper material of the self begins to surface. Your dreams start speaking to you again if you let them, instead of dissolving the moment you reach for your phone upon waking. Old memories arise, uninvited, asking finally to be looked at rather than buried once more. Feelings you have outrun for a decade catch up to you at last, breathless, and demand to be felt. This is uncomfortable. I will not pretend otherwise. But I want you to understand that this discomfort is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a sign that something, at long last, is beginning to go right. The self does not integrate in comfort. It integrates in honest confrontation, and honest confrontation requires the kind of quiet that our culture has made almost extinct. I am not asking you to become a hermit. I am asking you to reclaim, even in small doses, the practice of sitting with yourself without an escape hatch in reach. 10 minutes in the morning before the world gets its hooks into you. A walk without a device. A single evening a week where you let the silence in the apartment simply be silence rather than rushing to fill it. It sounds small. It is not small. It is, I would argue, the single most reliable doorway into the depth we have been discussing all evening, because it is only in that quiet that you can hear what your own shadow has been trying to tell you and it is only by hearing it that you can ever hope to integrate it. Now I want to address something that troubles many of you, I suspect, though you may not have said it aloud even to yourselves. If wholeness means embracing the shadow, does that mean I must become comfortable with my own cruelty, my own capacity for selfishness, for pettiness, for the ugliness I have spent so long trying to outrun? Let me answer this with total honesty, because I think you deserve nothing less. Yes, it means precisely that. Not comfortable in the sense of approving, never approving, but comfortable in the sense of no longer flinching from the knowledge that it exists within you. Every capacity for harm that you have ever condemned in another human being exists in seed form, somewhere within your own psyche as well. This is not a comfortable teaching. It was not comfortable for me to arrive at either decades ago, and it will likely not be comfortable for you. But here is the strange gift hidden inside this difficult truth. The person who has honestly faced their own capacity for cruelty is paradoxically far less likely to act it out than the person who has spent their whole life insisting they are incapable of it. Why? Because the material we deny does not vanish. It merely goes unsupervised. It waits in the dark, unwatched, unintegrated, and it erupts precisely in the moments we can least afford it. In the sudden explosion of rage at a loved one over something trivial, in the quiet cruelty we did not know we were capable of until we found ourselves in its grip, in the slow, corrosive resentment that poisons a relationship because we never let ourselves feel or name the original wound. The people who cause the most damage in this world are rarely the ones who have looked honestly at their own darkness. They are, far more often, the ones who have never once admitted it exists, and so it moves through them unwatched, wearing whatever mask is most convenient. Righteousness, victimhood, charm. To integrate your shadow, then, is not to unleash it. It is to become its witness, its keeper, its master, rather than its unknowing servant. And a person who has become the master of their own darkness, rather than its puppet, carries an entirely different quality in a room than a person still secretly at its mercy. You have met both. You know the difference, even if you have never had the language for it until tonight. Let me bring you back now to the empath, because I do not want to leave that thread unfinished. If you are someone who feels deeply, and I suspect a great many of you are, or you would not have stayed this long, listening this closely, I want to give you something practical to carry out of this room tonight, because I promised you truth, not just poetry, and truth without practice is only a pleasant evening, quickly forgotten. The first thing you must learn, if you are to become an integrated empath rather than a merged and exhausted one, is the difference between feeling with someone and feeling for them in a way that erases your own ground. When you sit with another's pain, ask yourself, gently, silently, whose feeling is this precisely in this moment? Is this grief I am witnessing, or grief I have now made my own without permission? This single question asked honestly and often, is the beginning of the boundary that will save you from a lifetime of borrowed suffering. The second thing you must learn is that your own unfelt feelings are the doorway through which everyone else's feelings rush in and overwhelm you. This is a strange but reliable law of the inner life. The parts of yourself you have not yet grieved, not yet processed, not yet fully felt, remain open wounds, and open wounds are exactly what other people's pain finds and floods into. The empath who has done the work of feeling their own grief fully, their own anger fully, their own fear fully, develops something like a scar where there was once an open wound, and a scar, unlike a wound, does not bleed every time someone near it is hurting. This is not coldness. This is the very thing that allows warmth to be sustainable rather than self-destructive. And the third thing, perhaps the hardest, is this: you must learn that your sensitivity was never meant to make you responsible for managing everyone else's emotional state. Many of you learned very young that your worth was tied to your usefulness in soothing the moods of others. I want to release you from that belief tonight as plainly as I know how. You are not obligated to absorb every storm that walks past you. You are permitted, you are in fact required, if you wish to become whole, to let some storms simply pass, witnessed but not carried. Do this work, even imperfectly, even slowly, and something remarkable begins to happen. Your empathy stops being a leak in your own boundary and becomes instead a gift you can offer from strength rather than from depletion. And people feel that difference instantly the moment they are in your presence, though they will rarely be able to explain why. Being near you feels so different from being near someone equally kind but far more porous. I want to say something now about speech itself, since our title tonight promises to explain why people feel you before you speak. And I do not want to leave the before you speak half of that promise unexplored, only to abandon the words entirely. Because when you do finally speak from this place of integration, something changes there too. A person who has done this work does not need to fill silence out of anxiety. Have you noticed this in the rare individuals who carry the aura we have been discussing all evening? They are comfortable with a pause. They do not rush to answer. They let a question sit in the air for a moment before responding, not out of theatrical effect, but because they are actually listening, not performing listening, not waiting for their turn, but genuinely receiving what has been said before deciding what, if anything, needs to be added to it. This is astonishingly rare, and it is one of the most immediate ways the aura we are discussing announces itself the moment words finally do arrive. And when such a person speaks, their words tend to be fewer and heavier than the words of someone still performing. They have nothing to prove because they are no longer trying to convince you or themselves of their own worth through the volume or cleverness of their speech. This is not a technique of restraint you can adopt tomorrow by simply talking less False restraint is its own kind of performance, and people feel that too. It is the natural consequence of no longer needing to talk yourself into existing. When you are secure in your own depth, you do not need your words to build a case for you. Your presence has already made the case long before the first sentence left your mouth, which is, of course, precisely the phenomenon that brought you into this room tonight. I want to close now by speaking directly to whatever part of you is sitting here tonight, wondering whether this work is even possible for someone like you, whether the wounds you carry are too old, too deep, too tangled for this kind of integration. I want to answer that fear honestly, because I think it deserves an honest answer rather than a comforting slogan. It is possible. Not easy. I have not once tonight promised you easy, and I will not insult you with that lie now, but possible and more than possible. It is, I believe, the very task each of us was given the moment we were born into a body capable of feeling this much. You did not stumble into sensitivity by accident. You were not cursed with depth. You were given a particular kind of instrument, tuned more finely than most, and the task of your entire life is not to silence that instrument, not to numb it, not to spend your days managing its overwhelming volume, but to learn slowly, patiently, sometimes painfully, how to play it. This is the work of becoming whole. It is not a destination you arrive at and then rest finished for the remainder of your days. It is a practice renewed each morning, each time you catch yourself reaching for the old mask instead of the harder, truer path of honest presence. Some days you will fail at it. I have failed at it more times across my own life than I could ever count for you tonight. And I do not say that to diminish what I have offered you this evening, but to make it believable, because a wholeness that claims to be finished, permanent, and effortless is not wholeness at all. It is simply a new, more sophisticated mask. But here is what I want you to carry out of this room more than any single idea I have offered tonight. Every time you choose to look honestly at the parts of yourself you would rather hide, every time you sit with another person's pain without either fleeing from it or drowning in it, every time you allow yourself real solitude instead of another hour of noise, every time you feel your own grief fully enough that it no longer needs to ambush you at inconvenient hours. Every one of these small, unglamorous, largely invisible acts is slowly, cumulatively, building the very aura you came here tonight hoping to understand. Not a trick, not a performance. A gathering wholeness that one day, without any announcement, without any fanfare, will walk into a room slightly ahead of you, and the people in that room will feel it the way you have felt it in the rare few who have done this work before you. You will likely never know, most of the time, that it is happening. That is, in fact, one of the surest signs that it is real. The people who ask me, across the years, whether they have found their aura yet, are almost always still performing, still reaching, still checking a mirror that cannot show them what they are looking for. The ones who have actually arrived somewhere near this wholeness rarely think about it at all. They are simply too occupied with the work of living honestly to notice the quiet, steady thing they have become in the process. So do not chase the aura. I want to leave you with this above everything else I have said tonight. Do not chase it, because it cannot be caught by chasing, only by the slow, unglamorous, deeply unfashionable work of turning toward yourself instead of away, again and again and again, for the rest of your life, imperfectly, honestly, and without an audience. Do that patiently for long enough, and I promise you something I do not promise lightly. You will become the kind of person a room feels before you have said a single word, not because you tried to be, because you finally stopped trying to be anyone else. Thank you.